What is going on, gamers? Aevatrex here, and today I want to talk to you about one of the heroes that I feel personally is very underappreciated and very underused, and that would be the hero Shade. Now, Shade is a very situational hero, and what I mean by that is a lot of times he's not very useful, but if you know when he's useful and you use him correctly, he could be a lifesaver. So let's go ahead and just talk about Shade, and you can call this a hero review if you will, but it's gonna be more of just talking points and how I utilize him to his maximum, and maybe you guys can do the same. So let's go ahead and go into Shade. The first thing we will see is his trophies. There's one specific thing that I want to point out about his trophies, and that in none of his trophies does he have life leech. So if you take a look at all these trophies, they do add some stats, but none of them have life leech. And if you go into another hero like a demon slayer, this belt right here has life leech. Now essentially what life leech does is that every time the hero attacks, he actually takes some HP back. So that's something very notable to mention, because when we get into the monster hunt aspect of that, it's going to come into the forefront. So skipping that for now, let's go ahead and go into the battle skills. To be honest, he does not really bring much to the table. He has wall defense, trap, building speed, which is and then infantry defense boost. So if you're gonna get a boost, defense would be the worst one. So as far as sending Shade into battle with your troops, etc., he's really not one that you would prefer to use. So I'm not gonna spend too much time here. It is what it is. He really doesn't provide much as far as his battle skills. Now the hero skills, this is where it comes into fruition, his main aspect. The first one is going to be illusion. Okay, he assumes an elusive stance, increasing reflexes for 8 seconds. Essentially, he becomes much harder to hit. So when you look at his stats, for instance, his HP, his defense, his magic defense, all of that, they're there, but because his elusiveness is going to be much higher, they're not as bad as you would think. Like defense and magic defense, that's really nothing to write home about. Like they're actually horrible, but because so many attacks will miss him, they're really not as bad as you would think. So back into the hero skills. Muting missile. He flings a dagger at an enemy, dealing damage and inflicting silence for 5 seconds. And not only does it silence for 5 seconds, it does over 4,000 damage. Now this is important because when do you usually use an assassin hero like this? It's against magic users. So this silence plus this burst of damage can become really handy. Now the last one is going to be Assassin's Lore, and essentially he increases his crit by, let's just say 200, which is nice because an assassin, you want it to hit fast, you want it to hit hard, and if it crits, even better. And then the ambush is where I guess you can call it his true assassin skill. He moves quickly to the side of an enemy to attack, dealing damage to all enemies in a small area and hitting them 3 times each. Deals over 2,000 physical damage per hit, so we're talking about 7,000 damage. Here is the thing. If you compare him to Demon Slayer, what sets Shade apart is that unlike the more popular assassins like the Demon Slayers, the Femme Fatale, this is not an assassin that's gonna jump over to the enemy side right away. He will actually stay on your side and fight, and when he actually jumps, usually if you use a team correctly, it's gonna be with a combo of procs. So for instance, if you're having an issue with a magic caster that's in the second line of defense after the initial tank, Shade is one that you actually want to use. So let me go ahead and show you some replays and tell you exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, now here's the first one. I'm gonna go ahead and pause it real quick. Now, the team that I am using, this is very important. The most important ones here is gonna be Rose Knight, Shade, and Incinerator. These 3 combined do a lot of damage. Now the other ones that I'm using, like the Lore Weaver and the Witch Doll, they're more of like a supporting cast. You can kind of play around with them a little bit, but this team here, essentially what it's meant to do is for Incinerator to use her procs to whittle down that front line, the tank and the two behind the tank. And then Shade and Rose Knight usually are synchronized to where when Shade procs, Rose Knight is proccing, and that just shreds enemies. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you exactly how all of this goes down. So here we go. As you can tell, Shade, unlike the other ones, he's staying in his lane per se. He is still in your line. He hasn't jumped. And here is when it comes, like you see this, they all healed, correct, right? There goes my proc, and that's what I'm talking about right here. My Rose Knight is going to be ready to proc, and so is Shade. Usually when that happens, no matter who they got, that guarantees 1 or 2 kills. So let's go ahead and show you what that looks like. There goes Shade, and now even though he's going to get procced on, he dodges Tracker's attack. That is where the elusiveness comes from, okay? Even though his defense is horrible, if he's dodging Tracker's attack, etc., he becomes invaluable. So usually another assassin would be completely dead right here, right? Not him. So once that's gone, look at their line. Boom. Complete, like they just had 5 heroes up, and after that happened, all of them were completely gone. Now let's see another instance. Now this one, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you guys right now, this is the same team. It's gonna be the same exact thing. We want Incinerator to be proccing, then we want Shade to be attacking with Rose Knight, and then you want Rose Knight and Shade to get off their attack at the same time. I guess you can call it a wombo combo, but this wombo combo, when it hits, things are going to die, okay? Even if they get a heal off, it doesn't matter, because you saw the last replay. They got a heal off literally right before they procced, and their whole team still died. So again, Incinerator is going to be working their line, lowering their health little by little. That way when Rose Knight and Shade proc, things are going to die. Now, the team that I'm going up against is actually a very, very popular team. I would even say an overused team, but overused, I don't think it's the right word, because it's a really solid team. So let's go ahead and see how it plays out. There we go. Now Shade, once again, is going to stay right with your team. He's not going to jump. So, for instance, against this team, if you have an assassin that jumps over right away, that assassin's usually going to die like this. But because Shade stays on your side to begin the battle, he's relatively safe. So once again, let's see it unfold. There we go. Now take a look at their health, okay? Look at the big guy's health. He's about halfway. Shade is going to proc earlier than Rose Knight, but usually that's not the end of the world, because Rose Knight, as you can tell, is going to follow right up. So let's take a look at how this goes on. There he goes, and then there's the Rose Knight proc, and as you can see, 2 have already gone down. And the thing about the 2 that went down is the most important 2. That's what sets this apart. The big guy went down and the witch doll went down. And even though they took out my supporting cast, meaning my lore weaver and my witch doll, because the main 3 are still here, it will not even matter. So watch this. Look at my Shade. He's gonna take a tumble, right? You think he's dead, but he's gonna stay alive. Here's gonna be the Rose Knight, the heal, and once he gets that heal, it's over. So this wombo combo really works. But speaking of this wombo combo, let's go ahead and see it live. Now I see that this guy, he has pretty much a whole host of casters, but the front 2 line is going to be Petit Devil and Witch Doll, which is usually a problem. So let's go ahead and go with the combo that we are showing right now. And the one thing that you have to keep in mind when you're doing this is that their team is going to flip, okay? So even though you see your team, you would think that my Shade is going to walk up to their Witch Doll. That's actually not the case. When the battle starts, the opponent's heroes are going to be flipped. So the Petit Devil is actually going to be on the left side, etc. So you have to keep that in mind. So the Shade essentially is going to be walking up to the Petit Devil. And why this is important is because if you're going to be using somebody like Incinerator, where her procs are very directional, you want to make sure that you're actually going to be attacking the right thing. So in this case, my Incinerator, instead of actually targeting the Petite Devil and the Tracker, she's actually going to be targeting the Witch Doll and the Lore Weaver, which in my case, that's exactly what I want, because that's who I want to kill right off the bat. So with that being said, let's go ahead if we can get Rose Knight and Shade to attack at the same time and take this team down. As soon as we take two at the same time out from here, the match is pretty much over. So let's go ahead and see it in action live. Okay, so here we go. The main thing is to try and keep my Rose Knight alive. Like, that's gonna be the main thing that we should be worried about. Rose Knight is gonna stay up, and here we go. Now they're kind of synchronized right now. There we go. That's what I was looking for. There goes the Shade. There goes the Rose Knight, and that's pretty much game. That's pretty much game. You took out the Lore Weaver. You took out the Petite Devil, and now it's just gonna be they're just gonna go ahead and destroy these. There we go. The Tracker might hit. Yeah, he hit the Shade, but it doesn't matter because it's game over. So this wombo combo is super strong. The only thing that can derail you is if your Rose Knight doesn't stay alive long enough. But if your Rose Knight is not staying alive long enough, then that means that you're probably you should be using a separate team. Again, this team is super strong, but you also got to know when you should be using it, and that is when it's a lot of casters, that your Rose Knight can survive long enough to have the Rose Knight proc, the Shade proc, followed by the Incinerator proc right after. Usually that's going to spell trouble for most heavy spellcasters team. And because this week you have a spellcaster, I guess Constellation, a lot of people are trying to abuse it, but this team is abusing them. And again, we have another similar team. They're using a lot of spellcasters, which is fine, because that means that as long as Shade and Rose Knight can proc at the same time, it doesn't even matter if they have full HP, somebody's gonna die. And if somebody dies, that means that their whole team dies. So again, we're gonna be using Incinerator to riddle their HP a little bit, and then Shade. What sets him apart, if this video has to come down to just a few sentences, is that he is going to stay on your side of the field, whereas other assassins might go to the other side and then get killed right away. And he's going to synchronize with your procs, making him super deadly. So let's go ahead and see this happening right now. Let's see. Now, so the main goal here is to take out the Witch Doll and the Lore Weaver. Those are the most dangerous ones here. As long as they're gone, you'll be fine. So let's see. There. Okay, so here we go. My Rose Knight is still good health. There is my Rose Knight proccing, which is perfectly fine. Lore Weaver is down. So this goes to show you that even if they don't synchronize perfectly, meaning that your Rose Knight and your Shade proc at the same time, as long as you have an Incinerator, and this is why you use Incinerator as well. Look at the damage that Shade just did. Holy mo, I have to see that again. And he dodges at the end. Okay, I have to replay that again. I'm sorry. That was, if you had to get any sort of explanation in Shade, that was it right there. I gotta replay that. Okay, so here's the replay. So like I was saying, essentially you want Rose Knight and Shade to proc at the same time, but the reason Incinerator is so great is because check out the linear damage that she does to the healer and to the Witch Doll, okay? So she takes out the Lore Weaver, which heals Witch Doll, but Witch Doll was also in trouble. This is why they work together so perfectly, because they do so much damage in a linear fashion that as long as one or two go off, you'll have a great time. So check out this Shade proc, okay? Just look at all the damage that he does right now. Did you see that Tracker? Or no, I think it was the Snow Queen. And then dodges the hit at the last. That's ridiculous. Now let's go ahead and go into the monster hunting part. Shade is very good versus monsters that are weak against physical damage. But remember at the beginning when I said that he had no item that has leech life, this is where it actually shows. This is a level 3 Bon Appetit. So let me go ahead and show you the battle and the heroes that I'm using. Okay, now Shade is going to be part of the heroes that I'm using, and all of these heroes have life leech except for Shade. Now the good thing about Shade is that, for instance, when all the other heroes are rendered useless, they're turned into meat, literally turned into meat, Shade is able to dodge that and keep doing damage. The only issue is that, as you can see, everybody else is able to gain their life back except for Shade. So if you're going to be doing some higher level monsters like level 3, level 4, level 5, etc., you have to keep in mind that Shade is not going to be able to sustain himself. So if you're not using a healer or a tank, etc., you have to keep in mind that Shade might not be able to keep up with the damage. This is why I keep saying, if you're going off of a list that says, hey, for this monsters use these heroes, for these monsters use these heroes, and it doesn't break it down like level 1s, level 2s, all the way up to level 5, do not listen to that list because it doesn't take into account anything like that. So for instance, on a level 3, Shade was only alive for about half the battle. Then after that, he died. My other heroes were able to make up for it and was able to kill the Bon Appetit. But I'm going to go ahead and show you a level 2 and the difference between a level 2 and a level 3. And then from there, you can imagine a level 4 and a level 5. Okay, so here's a level 2. So essentially, the only difference here is that the monster is now level 2 rather than level 3. Remember, on the level 3, Shade halfway through the battle was already done. No more DPS from Shade because he was not able to sustain himself and the damage was too great from the level 3. But in this situation, a level 2, maybe he's able to survive. So right now, the main thing that you want from a Shade is to be doing constant damage, which he is, and also to start dodging this right here. Now in this instance right there, he didn't dodge it, but he's still going to be doing really well DPS. So 9 seconds to go, Shade is still alive and well, so that's bodes well for you. Here is where he really shines. He was able to dodge that, and for the last few seconds was actually able to keep doing damage. So at level 2, he was actually able to survive the whole battle, keeps doing damage, dodges enough to stay alive. Level 3, not so much. So Shade, if you're doing level 1s and level 2, he's fine to use, especially if it's against a monster that it's weak against physical damage. But once you get up to the higher levels, you got to make sure that you have a way to keep your Shade up, whether it's heals, a tank, etc. And also, just as a general tip, if you ever see a list that has 5 heroes listed for 1 monster and it doesn't break down the levels of the monster, do not go by that list. Maybe use it as a general rule, but don't use it as gospel, because if you're using that list for level 4s, view the battle, because I can assure you that probably all your heroes are dying midway through the battle, and that's not what you want. You can use those lists for general things, general knowledge, but you have to be able to adjust depending on the level of the monster. So again, Shade is really good for monster hunting, but you need to know when you can use him, when he's good to use, and when he's not. And this was a perfect example of that. Always view your battles until you have a set team for these level monsters and the different type of monsters. But yeah, appreciate you guys for watching. Hopefully you learned something new about Shade, and maybe you can start using him in better situations to better your play, whether it's Coliseum, monster hunting, etc. Appreciate you guys for watching, and until later, bye.